Tuesday, August 21st, 2018, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Today I'd like to talk about the globalists, global warming, and how we need to keep an eye out and be very vigilant for campaigns by these guys. And one thing we need to do as the general public is to dig deeper and see who's behind organizations, where they've worked, what they've said. And today I'm going to talk about the World Economic Forum, which we all know, or might not know. If you might not know, it's a globalist meeting place in Davos, Switzerland, where multi-billionaires, bankers meet every winter to discuss globalization. President Trump attended this year, but does that mean he's a globalist? I don't think so. I think it means he wants to see what these guys are up to. That's why he went. You know, keep your friends closer and your enemies even closer, and I think that's what he did. The World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, I'll go over it a little more after we look at the markets. But yesterday, looking at Facebook, and I do have a page for Monaco 64 on Facebook, and I publish the videos there. I don't really advertise it too much. I also have my own Facebook page, which, to be honest, I don't look too much at. But yesterday I looked at it, and one of my friends, an old school friend from Brazil, he started posting loads of stuff about climate change, World Economic Forum. So they're doing a huge campaign now for that. So after we quickly look at the video, I'm going to go through all these things, climate change or global warming, the bankers, and who's really behind it. And I've made a couple of videos about it before in the past, and I'll talk about that as well. So it's just before 8:30 a.m. London. What are the markets doing? Well, gold is continuing to move higher. We almost got back up to 1200 this morning, or overnight. It's right now 1194.50, up about 4. The high's been 1196.60, and the low has been just below 1190. Silver's up 4 cents, or 1/4%. Silver's still underperforming gold at the moment, which is not ideal. But anyway, it hasn't been smashed down. They tried it yesterday while gold was up, but they haven't really quite succeeded. Silver 1479 right now. Range has been 1484 to 1472. The Dow is up 23 points, 25,780. S&P up 1 1/4, 2858. The NASDAQ 100 futures up 13 points at 73.83. And the currencies are a bit stronger. And by that I mean the pound, the euro, which are quite a big chunk of the dollar index. The pound is up almost 1/3% at 128.32, and the euro as well, up 1/3 at 115.19. So that's helping gold a little bit, even though this relationship has been kind of, it's not really fixed in stone. The dollar is unchanged against the yen, right around 110, 110.08 right now. And the dollar unchanged against the yuan, Chinese yuan, 683.50. What about those emerging market currencies? While the Turkish lira is at 612, the dollar is buying 612. So that's off the highs, of course, we saw last week above 7, but above the lows below 6. The Brazilian real yesterday continued to creep up. The dollar continued to creep up. The real continued to fall. It closed around 397. Right now it's not trading. So, World Economic Forum. Yeah, yesterday I started receiving, well, I didn't receive it, but I saw this friend on Facebook putting up, there's a video, and this is what you see here. Do you think we can still prevent a climate catastrophe? Producing a lot of the country's food. They're talking about the droughts in Australia. And maybe some of my Australian viewers can talk about it, but I know it's not it's a bad situation, the droughts in Australia, but it seems like nowadays these people who push for global warming and climate change, anytime the weather is extreme, or like we've had the heat wave this year, they bring on, they start talking about climate change, how we need to do what they say, right? Like Al Gore. And but you go back to 1976, we had an even worse heat wave in the UK. I don't think we should pollute the planet, nor should we wreck the planet. But a lot of what's happening in the climate is to do with cycles. I don't think it's man-made, and I'll go in further into what I think the agenda really is. So yeah, they've got all these kind of things: rapidly increasing global warming, World Economic Forum. And then they put on Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull of Australia. Australia is now a land of drought. So all these things, and I mean, you might find it on Facebook if you want to have a look. And that's what we need to do, is keep an open mind about these things. I'm not just gonna like delete my Facebook account because I don't want to see these things. You need to keep abreast of who's doing what on Facebook, and these people are not good, World Economic Forum. So now I'll show you some people who are involved in the World Economic Forum, the so-called leadership, right? So here's the Board of Trustees. Who have we got? Mark Carney, Governor of the Bank of England, former Goldman Sachs. Al Gore, the inventor of the internet, right? And the man who's made millions off global warming and what they call now climate change. This summer it's been good for them because it's been really hot, so they can go back to talking about global warming. But when it gets really cold in the winter, they talk about climate change. Angel Gurria. So who is Angel Gurria? Let's go over Angel Gurria, or Angel Gurria. Here we go. So he's a Mexican economist and diplomat, Secretary General of the OECD. He's a Harvard-trained economist, right? Postgraduate at University of Leeds. What else does it say about him? One interesting thing I saw here, it says, in 2007, he was the first recipient of the Globalist of the Year Award of the Canadian International Council to honor his effort as a global citizen to promote transnationalism, inclusiveness, and global consciousness. So he's one of the guys at the World Economic Forum leadership. Peter Brabeck-Letmate. And yeah, that's why people don't realize who's behind these things. They don't want to do their homework and go and look who's behind the World Economic Forum. They just take their word for it. So who is this guy, Peter Letmate? Or let's have a look. Tell you who he is. Peter Brabeck-Letmate. So he's an Austrian businessman. He's chairman emeritus, former chairman and CEO of the Nestle Group. This is really interesting because I've heard some, I think it was Alex Jones of InfoWars talking about that they want to commoditize water. So I'll read what he thinks about water, the guy who's so worried about climate change. Brabeck-Letmate, called as Peter Brabeck, appeared in the 2005 documentary We Feed the World. And while he was speaking on the subject of water, he said, and I quote, "It's a question of whether we should privatize the normal water supply for the population. And there are two different opinions on the matter. The one opinion, which I think is extreme, is represented by the NGOs who bang on about declaring water a public right. That means that as a human being, you should have a right to water. That's an extreme solution. The other view says that water is a foodstuff like any other, and like any other foodstuff, it should have a market value." And he added, "Personally, I believe it's better to give a foodstuff a value, so that's we are all aware it has a price, and then that one should take specific measures for the part of the population that has no access to this water. Following controversy on social media about these remarks, he stated that he does believe that water for basic hygiene and drinking is indeed a human right. So he is the chairman emeritus of Nestle, former CEO, who would make loads of money from that, Nestle. World Economic Forum is a platform for the globalists, for the central bankers, and we've had, as you know, over the last 100 years, and you can look this up, you can buy these books by Anthony Sutton, how the bankers have financed all the wars in the last 100 years, Wall Street, City of London. So now the bankers are involved in trying to tell you that there's a problem, that we are polluting the country too much. They don't tell you that the richer a country becomes, the less polluting it is. As President Trump says, the thing about the Paris Accord, the climate change, is to deindustrialize the developed world, Western Europe, North America, and allow the emerging markets, China, India, to pollute, and so they can like redistribute the wealth from the West, North America, to the emerging markets, and I think that's wrong. So what about who is behind climate change? Because I've made a couple videos. One of them is I entitled "President Trump Declares War on Globalists by Withdrawing from the Paris Climate Accord." And in this video, I actually attach another video that I've made before about this subject. And I talk about George Hunt, who was part of UNCED. And in this video, George Hunt, who's died already, he talks about how Maurice Strong, who's part of the UN, a Canadian guy, and Edmund de Rothschild, sounds familiar, the name, how they were involved in the 1980s, even as far back as 1970, in creating this global warming climate change agenda, and that how they want to commoditize carbon. And believe it or not, I mean, even back when I was still working in the city as a futures broker, they came up with a carbon future, carbon credits. So that's what it's all about. They want to redistribute the wealth and make money on your backs with this climate change agenda. So I put a link to this video above in the cards. In the description, I'm going to put a link as well in the cards for my first video about George Hunt, and in the description. I highly recommend, if you have time, to watch that. So what about so the same guys, the bankers, the globalists, they're also involved in something called ICE, Intercontinental Exchange. And first of all, I'll tell you who backed this exchange, because it's a relatively new exchange. May 2000, ICE, or Intercontinental Exchange, they call it ICE now, was founded by Sprecher, Jeffrey Sprecher, and backed by, drum roll, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, BP, Total, Shell, Deutsche Bank. So the major oil companies and the major investment banks. Climate exchange. So ICE bought the Climate Exchange. In April 2010, ICE acquired Climate Exchange PLC for $622 million. So now they have a climate futures. They're trading this thing. Asset classes. So they've made it into an asset class. Emissions. Environmental risk management is an increasingly important component of business operations of energy-intensive industries. ICE's North American and European environmental emissions contracts provide a way to hedge exposure and mitigate environmental compliance risk. So there you go. I guess I need to talk about why I think the planet has been polluted, why we've got the planet's been kind of wrecked in some places. Well, these people are not going to look at this because they're part of the globalist central bankers and they want to perpetuate their fiat money system. But I would venture to say that in the last 50 years, or to be exact, 47 years since the US removed the anchor from the monetary system, the world is gone on, how can I say, uncontrolled development, you could use the word. And I'm not saying that poorer countries shouldn't develop, but with fiat money, credit and debt is unlimited, and with credit and debt, there's a lot of projects that come about that shouldn't come about. Yeah, there's a lot of waste. It's development not based on reality. It's development based on central bankers and private bankers creating money out of thin air. It's not really money based on reality, based on the planet. And that, I think, is the biggest problem with what we've had. Hopefully, President Trump is for real and he's going to fight these guys. But that's what I want to say. Be careful with these campaigns. And it's not surprising. Just to finish off, I know it's been this video has gone on for a while, but sometimes subjects have to be talked about. So I read something on whatdoesitmean.com. A lot of this stuff there, sometimes I don't really rate. But one thing they talk about is how the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, has been involved in all these technology companies like Google, Facebook. And we all know that the CIA is a huge part of the globalists, in my opinion. And, that's why JFK wanted to get rid of the CIA. And they do it through this company called IQTEL. So, and that's why they're banning people like Alex Jones, because Alex Jones is not part of the program. He's not a globalist. So if you enjoyed this video, please like, share it, subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet. You can also follow me on Steam, at DTube, and on Twitter. If you like to contribute to the channel, there's some links below in the description for donations, and there's also a store, a Monaco 64 store. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.